Has anybody noticed the price of gold lately?
I haven't noticed.
$3,500.
Oh, it's gone up.
An ounce.
Yep.
Are you aware of the Gold Reserve Act of 1934?
I believe that's when they started stockpiling it for Fort Knox and what have you.
It is also the same law that made it illegal for citizens to own gold. You had to turn in all of your gold in exchange for paper currency.
Yeah. A lot of people said no.
When the dollar was first created, it was pegged to gold.
Mm-hmm.
A US dollar was equal to 1 ounce of gold. Now your US dollar is worth fuck all.
Yeah.
Because an ounce of gold is worth 3,500 US dollars. So what happened anyway? Here's a conspiracy theory that's right in front of everybody's faces that nobody ever seems to think about. It's called the Bretton Woods system. In 1944, a new international monetary system was forged by delegates from 44 nations in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire in July 1944. These 44 nations are getting together and deciding what the American dollar and economy is going to do. I don't recall seeing anybody vote for any of this. Delegates to the conference agreed to establish the International Monetary Fund. Well, isn't that interesting, Bolsheviks?
Drink.
And what became the World Bank Group? How about that? The system of currency convertibility that emerged from Bretton Woods lasted until 1971 when it collapsed spectacularly. Okay, this is in super duper fine print, so Command plus.
Super duper fine print.
The United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference, the Bretton Woods Conference, was held in July 1944 at Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, where delegates from 44 nations created a new international monetary system known as the Bretton Woods system. These countries saw the opportunity for a new international system after World War II that would draw on the lessons of the previous gold standards and the experience of the Great Depression to provide for post-war reconstruction. We lost the fucking war. The communists won the war. This is the communists completely rewriting your entire economy, how your dollar works, and the value of gold. Oh, wait, your money isn't pinned to anything. They can just make it up as they go along, which they have done, which is why you pay $43 for a steak now.
How Bolshevik of you.
Yep.
It is. This is the Communist Third International.
Correct.
We're currently looking at the Communist Fourth International. You want a conspiracy theory? Here's your conspiracy theory. Go read some of this stuff. They sought to create a system that would not only avoid the rigidity of previous international monetary systems where a coin or a paper note of money was pinned to an ounce of gold. Look, if your economy can't survive, that's not our problem.
That's right.
But this was that attempt at making everybody equal, because can't we all just get along? What it is the wealthy, the Bolsheviks. If you've looked at any of the old Soviet stuff, there was an ultra wealthy class and then there was the poor.
Yep.
They want that worldwide. Those at Bretton Woods envisioned an international monetary system that would ensure exchange rate stability, prevent competitive devaluations, and promote economic growth. Let me explain to you what this means. The wealthy people in each of these 44 countries who are running the whole show, most of this goes through Davos and Monaco and the Hamptons, places like that. They are arranging the economies so that the flow is even with them, and screw you.
That's right.
They don't care what happens to you. They don't care if you can't afford a house. They don't care if you can't afford to feed your kids. All they care about is that the flow is even with them. And that's why you see such a tremendous push of wealth to the wealthy and the middle class being shrunk. COVID was a huge thing with that.
My God.
The lockdowns, the numbers on that are amazingly horrible.
And
what happened?
The biggest wealth transfer from the poor to the wealthy in human history.
Yes.
Correct.
That's correct.
And it didn't really help at all that you had governors deciding what was essential and what wasn't.
Yeah, like the Hag of Lansing.
Yes.
Remember, deciding that you couldn't have gardening implements or plant a garden
Couldn't
because
even
that was
paint.
too dangerous.
Yep.
Couldn't paint your house either. That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
you had I think it was in New York City. A woman had a knickknack shop. She was selling stuff through online. She was literally live streaming. Okay, so this is that. Here's my bank account. If you want this, get in touch with me. They literally sent the police to her store to shut her down. No one else was in the shop. Nothing else was being done. She was selling stuff online through live streaming, and they shut her down.
That's crazy.
That's some bullshit right there.
That's crazy. That one I didn't hear about that one.
Yep.
So to reach a collective agreement with this was an enormous international undertaking. Preparation began more than 2 years before the conference, and financial experts held countless bilateral and multilateral meetings to arrive at a common approach. If you're going to read about a disastrous economist, look up John Maynard Keynes. He was an advisor to the British Treasury.
Oh, God.
He was an absolute idiot who was convinced that you could just create money out of whole cloth, basically print money, and that would solve inflation and solve depression and things like that.
Yeah, you and I know. Listen, all right. We as a race are evil hairless monkeys, and we're incredibly adaptive and cunning.
Yep.
And if somebody is going to go, hey, I can print out all of this fucking money and sell it to the rubes out there who think it's worth something, and in the meantime, I could just siphon a bunch for myself.
Yeah.
Or legally claw it back through taxes and other crap, fees and all the other stuff. That's what's happening. That's why the government we have is so huge. They print a bunch of fake money that's not backed by anything. They tax the shit out of you to get it back and leave you virtually nothing to get by with. Back in the day, one man working was enough to feed a wife, 2 kids, pay for a house, a car.
Most of my aunts and uncles, my great aunts and uncles had 5, 6, 7, 8 kids.
Yes.
Most of them.
Mm-hmm. And that was all on one salary.
Yep.
Today, you need to have 2 people working 2 middle-class jobs just to get by, not to even thrive.
Yep.
It's broken. It needs to get fixed.
And so the 730 delegates at Bretton Woods agreed to establish 2 new institutions, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. So in 1944, your whole world was sold out from under you, and you never even knew that it happened. The United States did not win the war. Germany lost the war, and the United States lost the war, and the Bolsheviks won the fucking war. That's just the way that it is. I don't care who says what about what. I had great uncles on Utah Beach, just as most Americans did. We all had somebody in World War II. My uncle was there. You can't say that. Yeah, we got fucking used. Sorry.
We also got used in World War One.
Yep. Oh, that's a whole other show.
I can
do a whole other show on World War One.
Yeah,
I'd like to be a part of that show because 1913 was probably one of the worst years in American history.
It was one of the worst years in American history, and it was also the time that a Supreme Court judge, what do they call them? Justices?
I think so.
Martin Brandeis sold out the population of the United States at the behest of, I think it was Jacob Rothschild, so that the Crown of England, via the British Foreign Office, would literally give Palestine to Rothschild in exchange for Rothschild having his friend Martin Brandeis, the Supreme Court Justice, convince Woodrow Wilson to send 325,000 young Americans to their death.
Yep.
in a war that wasn't ours to begin with.
Yeah, that's another show.
Like I said, it's another show. But you want conspiracy theories? Guess what? Our government is one of the biggest conspiracy theories out there. The shit that goes on will blow your mind. All you have to do is start digging. I was a firm believer in all this. My
Yeah.
time in service, I swore by oath, all of that stuff. Read all the World War II stuff when I was a kid.
Listen, I still love this country.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I would, if need
Yep.
be, if they called me back, I would do my best to defend it. I'm old. More than likely, I'll just ride a desk, talk some shit to people from time to time.
We could teach.
But mainly I would do that because I have to. I'm a retiree, and I'm subject to being called back. I don't have the luxury of saying no. But if I was a young person,
You'd never pass a med.
I know. But if I was a young person today, with what I just saw in the past 4 years, with what they did to the military, and the fact that they're willing to send you to your death so some people can get fucking rich, I don't think I would enlist today if I was a young man.
Yeah.
I don't think I would do it.
Yeah.
Unless I had no other choice.
Yep. Yeah. I now discourage people from enlisting when I can.
And listen, I hate to say that. I'm not here to lie to you guys. I'm just telling you the truth.
Yep.
And that is what my heart is telling me is,
Yep.
I mean, the government doesn't give a shit about you.
No.
And as a man, you are even more expendable today than you were in 1940.
One of the things that I tell people now is it has become self-evident that the region known as Washington, D.C. is essentially a hostile foreign government inside U.S. territory, posing as our government, bleeding off our country, and selling it off for parts.
Yes.
We're basically being cannibalized.
Well, first of all, you know what that is, right? That is what they do before bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
They sell off all of the company's assets.
Fire sale.
And then they have a bankruptcy, and then, the actual creditors and what have you fight over the scraps.
Yep.
We need to avoid
The
that from
vultures come
happening.
pick the bones.
Yeah. That is
about where we are right now.
Yeah.
But DC is a hostile foreign nation inside U.S. borders, in my opinion.
I get it. And
that's my opinion.
I can literally understand why you think that way.
No. Yeah, it's just absolutely... I'm mad. I'm mad.
Yeah.
I'm not happy. And it doesn't get any better.
Hell to the no.
This is the White House website, by the way. This is whitehouse.gov, lab leak, true origins of COVID. Okay.
Okay, now.
It was obvious that whatever this was weaponized.
Hang on. Let's bring this up.
Mm-hmm.
In 2021, I received an email from PayPal, and Blake received one at the same time. His was maybe the next morning, I think. Very close together. And PayPal just basically said, you can no longer do business with PayPal because we did something that violated the terms of service. I tried several times calling, emailing, trying to find out exactly what we had done, to no avail. And Blake got nuked because he was guilty by proxy. And during that time, we were covering...
Dude, they nuked his wife, too.
Yeah, they got it. They did his wife, too. But during that time, we were covering the vax mandate and covering legitimate scientific studies about the mRNA technology that they had used in the past on animals. And we were covering what exactly what would happen, which is coming true today. And that is, they have fought tooth and nail to not be classified as a bank, but they are marketing themselves as a bank. And they literally were using their clout to silence people from legitimately talking about something that is going to kill millions upon millions of people. If it hasn't done so already, which in my opinion, it has. So what I'm trying to say is the whole monetary system, like, I am so glad they're not going to do a U.S. crypto, because all it's going to take is somebody like, we don't like what Pop is saying, you're a pauper. You have nothing.
That's what the Real ID is for.
Yeah.
That Real ID is the linchpin that connects all of your everything.
Yep.
All they have to do is reference your Real ID number and turn off any bank associated with it.
And that needs to come to an end.
That's what that's for. It is a standard dictatorial
Correct.
move. China has exactly that right now.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
They have exactly that right now.
But they've got people that they haven't paid in 6 months. Now, if you did that in America, there'd be some shooty action going on.
I don't care about China, though.
I don't care either.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that could easily happen here.
Yeah.
They want what's going on in China to happen here.
Yes.
The people at the top are literally looking at China going, well, they have such a really good system because there's a small percentage of people at the top who live like absolute kings.
Yep.
And everyone else is suffering or working their fucking ass off. There's no middle class, or it's very limited, the middle class that they do have. And they're only allowed to be middle class because the people at the top say they can.
You're right, but hear me out.
But
The people at the top, what? The people at the top say they can. Why? So that the poor people can look at that tiny middle class and believe that they someday too can become that.
Yes.
That's why they do that.
Yep. Hope is the worm on the hook.
Yep.
That brings you to the dinner table
and keeps you from doing things like dragging out Madame Guillotine.
Yes, Madame Guillotine.
And taking some heads and burying some asses in pits.
Yeah.
That kind of hope that you too might someday achieve that middle class.
Yep.
Is what keeps you from saying, I revoke my consent to be ruled.
And we're actually going to put together a little video about the PayPal, how we're fighting back.
Oh, yeah.
And it's about time
that
somebody actually put together a campaign to cancel the cancelers. And I'm going to start that off. And it's going to be like a 5-minute long video explaining the whole process.
I sent you an email I sent you a letter. I have a copy of the physical letter that came from the White House that went to a guy that I know who's been trying to get one of the J6 guys in Colorado. Colorado's still holding people. New York is still holding people as well. The federal prisoners have been released, but there's dozens, if not hundreds of prisoners in state prisons that the freaking communist and Bolshevik government there won't let out. I feel bad saying Bolshevik at this point. I hope I don't give any of you a hangover. Fuck it, you'll be fine. Anyway, that letter, and just redact the guy's name.
Mm-hmm.
But you can use the letter itself because it is directly from the desk of the White House. And no, go that away. I don't know why that is there.
You're going to read it?
I will read part of it.
Okay.
I will read part of it. Dear guy that it's addressed to, thank you for taking the time to share your views regarding our justice system, public safety, and the rule of law. As president, one of my most critical duties is to restore the sacred principle of equal justice under the law for every citizen. That work begins with stopping the weaponization of our justice system and rebalancing the scales of justice to our nation's halls of power. In recent years, the American way of life faced an existential threat from a corrupt political class that has selectively enforced the law based on Americans' political, religious, and ideological convictions. For far too long, our federal law agencies abandoned justice in favor of political retribution, allowing violent criminals to roam the streets with impunity while targeting parents, churchgoers, political opponents, and everyday citizens. The letter goes on at length, but the general gist of it is that this is an official notice from the White House that they are aware that these things are going on, which means it's our duty from this point to push back as citizens.
Yes.
Because the office of the president can't really do anything, but he just released a letter. I have a physical copy of the letter from the White House saying that the White House knows that our justice system is corrupt from top to bottom, which is fuel for the PayPal fire, because the courts had been siding with PayPal all this time.
Yeah.
In other words, siding over political ideology.
And I'm betting that Act Blue and USAID probably sent some money to PayPal to make sure dissenting voices were quietly disposed of.
I would guarantee that.
Mhm.
Pretty much. I would pretty much guarantee that.
Yeah. And listen, it needs to go viral. We need to cancel the cancelers.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, PayPal should not be allowed to do business with any U.S. banks because they are indirectly enjoying FDIC insurance without actually being classified as banks.
Yeah.
They're being classified as a payment processor.
Yep.
But they're offering credit cards, savings accounts with other banks. So guess what? That needs to come to an end.
Yep.
In my opinion. Listen, I'm not that guy you want to fuck with because I hold a grudge for a long time. And I am going to write as many letters as it takes to make sure that those guys pay at least $1 billion in fines. And that'll be the most expensive account they have ever canceled in their entire existence.
I've been going after the federal government for the last 20 years. Look, the government, as much as I'm talking about them being the conspiracy theory problem, and they are, one of the things that they mistakenly did is back prior to the woke world taking over the military, back in the mid-90s and before that, the training was really good.
Mm-hmm.
They really trained us really well. The mistake that they made is when we got out, they didn't have a way to take that training from us.
You can't.
Now, FBI special agents frickin' frack, this is by no means any threat for violence or violins or saxophones or anything like that. So please sit back down and enjoy your energy drinks in despair. Because what I'm talking about is we don't fucking quit. And we won't fucking quit until we draw our last breath. We will come for you until we either get justice or we die.
Yeah.
That's it. Those are the only two switches to get us to quit.
Yeah.
And believe me, there's a lot more than just me and that guy over there out there who have had that training and are this mad.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of us. There's a whole shitload of us. And once again, FBI agents, special agents, frickin' frack. Nobody's talking about violins or string quartets here. So settle down.
No, I'm just talking about administrative war.
Administrative war.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yep. Unconventional warfare.
With admin.
With admin and paperwork.
Watch Grunt Speak live every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to join Pop for Supporter Sundays, go to redonkulous.com/donate and make a monthly pledge. A link is in the Meat Gazer box.